What's going on, everyone? Today we're talking solo runs. So maybe you only play with your friends and they're not on. Maybe you're tired of randoms not making the right calls or going on the right routes, or maybe you just want to challenge yourself. Either way, you're either thinking about doing a solo run or you're already doing solos, and that's why you're here. So let's get right on into it. Alright, first things first, solo runs are not as bad as you think. They might even be a little easier than you think, actually. Now, a couple tips to help you out a little bit to start off, no matter who you fight against. Make sure that you know what the boss's, the Night Lord boss, main weakness is. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to use your main regardless of the tips that I'm giving. The other thing is, because you're playing on your own, if things don't work out, or if you load into a match, you notice there's no camps that have the boss's weakness, and you don't have any weapon to challenge that boss, it's okay. You can just kind of scrap it altogether and start over. You're not hurting anyone because you're doing this on your own. Also, because you really kind of want to get to level 15 before you fight the Night Lord, don't forget that you can go into the night or the storm or whatever after the second day's boss, and you can do things like defeat monsters, even defeat maybe some bosses and stuff like that if they're not too far, capture a church, or do a bunch of stuff. Just make sure that you prioritize getting your souls or your runes after you die, if you die in the storm. Now, the last tip, which is probably the most important tip, which actually a lot of people already know, is that you can buy Wending Graces from the merchants around Limveld before you actually get to the Night Lord. And the other thing is that he's not the only merchant that you can get them from. You can get them from the merchant right before the Night Lord boss fight. Now, some people might not know this, that you can actually buy another one from the special merchant in the merchant village that sometimes spawns in Limveld. And that, in addition to possibly getting a bit of RNG, you can kill a boss and sometimes get one. Most people know about that. But as a solo run, you do pretty much kind of start it with one. It's not in your inventory, but you do get a one free revive in addition to any Wending Graces you have. Now, that out of the way, let's talk about the easiest Night Lord to beat, and that would be the Tricephalos run. And he is actually the easiest, and honestly, my favorite characters would be Guardian, Executor, Iron Eye, Raider, Wilder, and Duchess. But honestly, you could probably do this with any character. The problem is that he's pretty aggressive, so your spellcasting characters might have a little bit of problem with this one. Now, the other thing to mention is that on the expedition in Night 1, you might face the Bell-Bearing Hunter, and I know he's really kind of a tough boss to fight, especially on your own. So if you have a ranged weapon, that will make it a lot easier. If you're not a character that typically uses ranged weapons, try to pick one up before the end of Night 1, even if it's a crossbow. Everyone can use crossbows really well. Now, the second easiest Night Lord, in my opinion, would be Augur. And a little bit of this has to deal with two things. Now, first off, obviously you want to do lightning damage to this boss, but what's more important kind of is your character choice. If you pick Iron Eye, it makes him a cakewalk, but you could use Wilder and Raider. Pretty much anyone with a decent setup will work. Just don't forget that the enemies that are in the boss arena when facing the Night Lord in this expedition will deal damage to the Night Lord. So for instance, the jellyfish, a lot of people think like Guardian would be a bad one in this run, but his character skill, the whirlwind, will actually kill them with one whirlwind if you have the increased character skill duration relic. So it could be really, really good. Now, if you want a little bit more challenge, I will go with the Fisher in a Fog. This one isn't too terribly difficult either, and my favorite characters for this has to be Iron Eye, Wilder, and Raider. Those ones are really good, but again, pretty much anyone can do good with a good setup, like your spellcasters with a good fire spell could honestly melt this boss. So really the only trouble I would think that you might have with this boss will probably maybe be if you face the Dancer. Just don't forget that in this game you can sprint, unlike in Dark Souls 3. So what that means is that when he does his, 7-spin combo, you can actually just run away from his spin and you should be cool. You should not take any damage. Now, from this point on, the bosses will get a little bit more difficult. So, for instance, this next one will be the Sentient Pest. I would say this is probably the next hardest one in my opinion. Good characters to pick would be Iron Eye, Executor, and Wilder. But again, anyone with a good setup will work. With this one, your spellcasters could melt the Scorpion pretty fast, and Raider with a good weapon art could do the same. So what I would say as a tip is actually focus on the Scorpion in the first phase, because if you just focus on the Moth, then the Scorpion will probably just get you from behind. And the other bit of advice that I'd give you for the boss fight at the end of Night 3 would be, if you can grab a bit of magic negation in addition to resistance during your expedition, I think it will really help out so you can mitigate some of the Moth's damage. Alright, so now we got the Dark Drift Knight. This one is a little bit more difficult, but if you've picked the Guardian, Iron Eye, Executor, Wilder, or Raider, you're probably not going to have too much trouble. And I know some of you might think, well, the Guardian? Well, actually, yeah, because most of the Dark Drift Knight's damage is purely physical, so you can pretty much face tank that stuff. And if you have a relic that has the reflect property on it, then when you're in your stance, you can actually deal damage to him as you're just face tanking, and you could pretty much almost sit there all day, throw in a few guard counters, and wham bam, thank you ma'am. Alright, so now we're getting to the hardest bosses. Alright, so this one will have to be the Gaping Jaw next, and the Gaping Jaw, oh boy, I would pick actually the Raider on this one. You could also do well with an Executor or a Wilder, especially Executor if you're good with the deflecting. But Raider does so much stance damage, and you can, you can face tank his attacks, especially if you have the relic ability partial HP restoration upon post damage attacks, which comes from the Bloodborne rally mechanic, and you can also get it from the Hand of Millennia, as well as completing the Rotten Wood Shifting Earth. And basically it's just going to give you a little bit of health back after you take damage if you complete an attack right away. But aside from that, I mean, with this boss and the next couple of bosses I'm going to mention, you kind of start needing to get good. You guys probably knew this was coming, but the Equilibrious Beast out of the regular Night Lords is probably the hardest of the regular Night Lords, okay? So, in my opinion, Raider. Alright, Raider. But you can do well with Wilder, Iron Eye, and Executor. Just do not forget that in addition to being really weak to stance damage, he's really weak to holy, really weak, plus 35% damage, and he's also weak to fire. This is in addition to what it says on the game information saying that it's weak to madness. Yes, he's weak to madness, but honestly, just do holy damage, alright? Now, it totally makes sense that out of all the regular night bosses, the hardest one, this is obviously not counting Everdark bosses, the hardest one is the Night Aspect. And for this one, the characters that I would say are probably the easiest to defeat him with would be Iron Eye and Wilder. Again, remember, he's super weak to holy, but in phase 1 he's weak to fire, and in phase 2 he's just as weak to lightning as he is to holy. Alright everyone, hopefully you found something useful, you learned something, and maybe you actually even try to do some of these bosses solo. Maybe starting with the easy ones, build up some confidence, and with a little luck, getting good, you'll be able to conquer all of them. Let me know if you want me to rank up the Everdark bosses, which I have soloed as well. And otherwise, thanks, stay cool, and bye everyone.